This is the Humans of Gaming podcast, an open and honest conversation about games, life, and belief.
Hey, welcome to Humans of Gaming. I'm Drew Dixon. I'm the Chief Content Nerd at Love Thy Nerd, and I'm joined with my co-host, Chris Gwaltney.
Hey, what's up? I'm Chris. I am the Chief Executive Nerd, one of the founders of Love Thy Nerd, and yeah, we're super glad you're here for Humans of Gaming, where we get to talk to all kinds of humans that make games or do games things, and just get to hear their stories, hear about who they are as people, what makes them tick, and it is our pleasure to do so. We're glad you're here.
Yeah. This is a wild one, I feel like. I said this on, I don't remember I said this on the podcast. I think I did, but I mean, I've got to interview some really cool people. It's not like me, I guess I am bragging, but I don't mean to brag when I say this.
That's right.
But, we've had Rand Miller on here and who made Myst, and we've had like Ken Levine. I've interviewed him for the Game Church podcast, which we were able to get that episode onto this show, and huge, giant.
Well, even
video
like
game industry.
board game people too, like Rob Davio and Jamie Stegmaier, like some of those names too. Yeah.
But Roberta Williams is an icon in the world of video games. She's a pioneer. She's done a lot of firsts that she basically pioneered the not mystery game genre, but the point and click adventure game genre. Mystery House was one of the first games with, I think arguably the first game with graphics. So prior to that, like video games, like
what a weird thing to say about video games.
But prior to that, video games were text adventures.
Yeah.
That was what video games were at that time. But she essentially made a text adventure, but with graphics. And she just did the drawings herself, like line drawings and stuff. But like that, which like now you look at it and it's like, that seems silly almost to us because we have such like beautifully designed graphic video games. But that was groundbreaking and like changed the shape of video games and opened up so many people's eyes to what they could do. And the cool thing too is that like she just did it. She just went and figured it out. Like there was no game design school to go to. There were, there was no one to talk to about these kinds of things. She just figured it out. And she kind of taught herself a lot of the programming and stuff. And also like her relationship with her husband is really fascinating because she co-founded Sierra Online with her husband that would go on to make the King's Quest games, Phantasmagoria, like all kinds of games. And obviously Sierra Online became a really big deal and really influential in video games. But she needed his help because he was the one who had like formal training in programming and stuff like that. And like that was what he's doing by trade, but he didn't really see the value in it, like he had these other ideas of what he wanted to do. And so she basically this is a little spoiler, this is a teaser for the podcast, but she basically liquored him up and convinced him to make this game with her. And yeah, I think the rest is kind of history. So you get to hear that story on this show.
If you guys can't tell by this intro and how Drew hasn't shut up, he was a little excited about this. Yeah. And I am super bummed I missed it. I was out of town. I wasn't able to be there for the recording. But this is also really cool because like we've kind of heard that they don't do a lot of press and haven't done a lot of press. And so like for her to want to come on our show and talk was kind of a really cool opportunity. And I know Drew was borderline, if not starstruck.
Yeah.
And you'll probably get to hear him geek out the whole time.
I didn't want to ask, like, why did you agree to this podcast?
Yeah.
But the thought crossed my mind several times.
Oh, man, you should.
But I didn't ask because I was afraid to go, oh, wait, I thought you were a different podcast. And then she's
actually, I didn't agree, and I'm out of here. See you later.
No, but she was super cool to talk to, super gracious. And yeah, just rock star in the world of online,
the grandmama
digital
of video games.
gaming. Yeah, just of the world of games. So
hope you guys enjoy this episode with Roberta Williams and Drew trying to contain himself.
Yep. How is life? You're in California? Is that right?
No. We're in Seattle.
Okay, you're in Seattle now.
Seattle.
Okay.
Yeah, we do move around a bit. But basically, we do go between California and Seattle, basically.
Okay. You like life in the Pacific Northwest?
I love it. Yeah, I used to. Yeah. I was born in California, and Ken and I lived much of our life there, and started our company there, Sierra Online. And we moved here about 25 years ago to the Pacific Northwest. And at first, I have to admit, from California, it was a bit of a adjustment because the weather, the climatic aspects. It's cooler here, it's rainier here.
Yeah.
But I love it now. I love it now. But when we go to California, which we try to do about half the year in California in the winter, and then the other half here in the summer, warmer months in Seattle. I do kind of miss Seattle. It can get a little hot. You adjust.
Does the do you like all the rain? I think that's what people always talk about with Seattle. Have you gotten to where you like it, or is it?
It's funny.
There's the perpetual sunshine of California, right?
No, I love the sunshine, but the people think that it rains all the time, like it's constantly raining. It's not. Yeah. It really what it is. Well, it kind of does in the winter, say from mid-November to beginning of May, which is kind of a long time. It does rain quite a bit, but it's not like it's constantly raining, constantly. It's on and off. And the other thing that I've noticed, especially moving back to California in the winter time, is that when it rains in California, this is a kind of a crazy thing, but the rain is heavier. It's more sheeting, like sheets and drops.
Okay.
It's really wetter, although it doesn't rain as much. But here in the Pacific Northwest, it tends to be a little more mistier and a lighter. Mm-hmm. So it is a difference in the rain, but you get used to it. You do.
Yeah. People don't realize, but I know this now because I've lived in the Nashville, Tennessee area for about 7 years. Mm-hmm. But we actually get quite a bit more rain than Seattle here. So it's just that Seattle, I think in that area, it's like you said, it's like always misty, not always, but misty, drizzly.
When it does rain, it's more like a drizzle. But really, I think what everybody thinks of is it's always raining. It's cloudy a lot. I mean, even in the summer, like today, I got up and it was overcast. It's overcast, but then it kind of burns off, and by the afternoon it's nice and sunny and warm. In the right now today I think it's going to be about 71 or 72.
Oh, that sounds great. We're in this like really hot and humid time of year in Nashville,
right?
So
we don't have the humidity, so it's not as bad as everybody thinks, really.
Yeah. Well, we didn't bring you here to talk about the weather, even though I could go on, but you're kind of, I don't know if you think of yourself this way, but I certainly do. I think of you as kind of an icon in the world of video games. That may be weird for you to hear. I don't know. I'm sure that's not the first time you've heard it before.
I've heard it for a really long time. And I don't understand it. I have to say, I don't understand it. I really don't. I'm just me. I don't know what it was that created that exactly, but it's there.
Yeah. Well, you worked on and created some games that people absolutely love. How you got? Maybe let's just start at the beginning. I think that probably would be good. How did you get into making games?
Okay. Yeah. That story's been told many times. It started. My husband, Ken Williams. He he started his career basically in computers as a programmer. And at first he was programming on big mainframe computers and IBM mainframe.
Massive, huge. I remember those.
The cards, you know, everything. And it started with that. I did work with him somewhat on, and he did a lot of, we did a lot of being in computer rooms back in the early days when we were very young. Yeah. We got married very, very young. We were both teenagers, actually, when we got married.
Oh, wow.
Right out of high school. And really, neither of us had we didn't have college. He had some. I had like a semester. But we got married, and we got pregnant pretty quick after that. We just were just, you know, sort of kids. And and
it was a different world back then, where that was like, you know, a lot more commmen, I think. Now everyone's waiting.
I think we were a little more footloose and fancy free back then.
Sure.
That's a good way of putting it, you know. And I don't mean just, you know, Ken and I just think in general, just young people back then, we were a little more footloose and fancy free, and we're out to conquer the world or do whatever suited our fancy. And that was kind of the thing, you know. I kind of miss that, to be honest with you. I think everybody's a little bit so serious these days, but I don't know. Anyway, we were not.
Yeah, well, and I think like that. It's interesting that you say that, because I think that, as you describe, footloose and fancy free, like that sort of attitude, maybe I would guess probably played a big part in fostering you guys to step out and take a risk and make video games. Like that wasn't even something most people were doing back then, right? People weren't like, video games were not a thing that people were talking about, like, hey, let's make this, and maybe could be our career.
Yeah. Well, there were a few, you know, we weren't like the first or anything.
Right, sure.
And as far as adventure games go, besides Colossal Cave, which I think we know about Colossal Cave, the first real adventure game. It was in text, and that's what started it for me. Ken was in programming, and I was going to go back. I had helped Ken in a lot of the computer rooms back then, the big mainframe computer rooms, when he was programming and putting his deck of cards in and to run his programs. And I had a little baby. We were, 19, 20 at this point. And me and the baby would come, and our first son, and sit in the computer room with him all night while he was programming and doing what he's doing, trying to build his career. And he'd say, hey, Roberta, go and put this card deck in over there. And then,
And he was mostly like programming at this time. He was mostly programming like software.
It started out where he did some college, and that's where he at Cal Poly in Pomona, California.
Okay.
To take computer science classes, and those were not anything like today. They were not really that serious. It was like you could learn Cobalt or Fortran, or and how to program on these card decks, and and all that kind of stuff. It was like that. But he was taking those classes. So at the beginning, I mean, he was still in college, and he was earning some money on the side by driving kids, like adolescent kids around to get subscriptions for the Pomona, what was it called? Progress Bulletin newspaper, for kids to get subscriptions. He'd drop them off, in designated places, and they'd go get their subscriptions, and then they'd pick them back up, and take them home. That was his outside job, besides going to school during the day, learning programming. And I was working at for the County of Los Angeles as a typist clerk. So I actually had the bigger income at that time, because the only income was from the Progress Bulletin, dropping these kids off. At night he had to do his homework and to learn how to do the programming. So I would join him in the computer rooms when he was doing his homework and learning how to do that. And while he's doing that, I was changing the tape drives, or the hard drives, or putting the card decks in, and doing that for him while he's writing, and everything.
Yeah.
We did that a lot.
So you're kind of learning. You're kind of learning a little bit as well.
IBM mainframe.
Yeah.
It was IBM 360, and so which really worked out well for me, because later on, before we started Sierra Online, and he had graduated and he got his programming jobs, and he's moving up, and he did a lot of moving from company to company at that time, starting when he was about 20, getting his first computer job, first computer operating for a junior college. I think it was Chaffey College in California, Southern California. And again, I would be there. By this time, I'd had my child and was coming, and I was helping him do his job, because it was something to do. I mean, we were young, we didn't have much money, so I'll just come with you. And then when he got his first programming job, he was just bouncing from company. About every 6 months, I think, we moved, because there weren't very many people that knew how to program computers, so it was easy to get a job, and it was easy to go up, and it was easy to get more money. And so he was constantly being promoted and getting a new job, and we were moving and everything. In the meantime, I had gotten some jobs operating these IBM mainframe computers, like, for instance, with the County of Los Angeles. I got a job programming Los Angeles's big, at the time, their mainframe computer. I got a job doing that as their operator, not the only computer operator, but one of them, because I knew how to do it.
Yeah.
And there weren't that many people that knew how to do it. So I did. So I did that. So I did have that experience. And then also, before our second son was born, 5 years later, I had taken some courses in Cobalt at a local college. Actually, it was, we were living near Pomona again, and it was back at Cal Poly, and I took some courses in Cobalt. And so I wrote like one little program. I don't even remember what I was doing with it. I just remember doing it and attending the class. So I had it, and I got a job as a trainee Cobalt programmer with Lowry's Foods in Glendora, California, or maybe it was Glendale, being a trainee programmer for them, and in Cobalt. So it didn't last very long. I didn't like it, but I did it. I did it for about 6 months. So that's not like a lot of technology knowledge or experience, but it's enough. It was enough for me, and just living with Ken and everything he's doing with his programming, and we talked about it a lot. By that time, when our second son was born and just a baby, Ken was working for two companies. He was working for a company called Informatics, where somewhere in the Los Angeles area. We were living in Simi Valley, California, which was just a bit north and on the outskirts of Los Angeles County. And I wasn't working at the time. He was working for Informatics, and what they were doing was working on artificial intelligence and also creating new programming languages. So he was getting really in depth into computer programming from the machine language part of it, which was really, really good experience for him. That became very important for us, in that we did go on to create our own languages for creating our adventure games. But he also was working at night as a contract programmer for, I believe it was Children's Hospital in Los Angeles as well. So during the day, Informatics as his real job, and at night he was doing contract programming for Children's Hospital. And so he brought home kind of like we call it like a teletype machine, which really looked kind of like a printer, in a way, but it was a printer with a keyboard, and then it had where you could put a roll of paper in it, big roll of paper, a keyboard, and it via a modem and our home telephone. And if you remember, this was this is 1979, end of 1979. Telephones had the two earpieces, the big the telephones like we used to have. So the modems,
rotary old school phone we're talking about here.
So the modems were kind of a big object with almost like two foam holders that you could put your phone in, with the mouthpiece and the earpiece in each little foam area. And then you dial up the teletype machine through your modem and from your phone and modem. And he could dial into the big IBM mainframe computer that Children's Hospital had. And he could do his programming at night. But they also had some games on this big mainframe.
Okay.
And in fact, a lot of corporations back then that did do their programming, their accounting, or whatever it was that they were doing on their these big computers, they would have some games. They had some games like Star Trek. They had football, and it'd be little X's and O's, that you could move around. Star Trek was basically X's and O's with story.
Yeah.
I didn't play that, but one of the games that they had was this game called Colossal Cave. And it was an all-text game. And it was all text, and it had kind of a storyline, and you could play it, you could type in. Now, this is where the teletype came in. So he kind of said, Roberta, come here, you should see these games. And he kind of showed me Star Trek, and I was like, well, I don't care, football, And there's this other one. You might like it. Why don't you see if you like it? And maybe you could play it during the day while I'm at work at informatics, and you could sit here and, while you have the two little kids and, maybe play. And I was like, why do I want to do that? And he said, well, just try it. So he sat me down at the teletype machine. So again, it was a keyboard with this roll of paper, and he's dialed into this computer at Children's Hospital via the modem and our telephone. And he says, look, you can type in, and he said, look, and he started it up, and up it came, you're standing in the forest in front of us, this little building, and there's a stream running out of the back of the building, and da 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 da. And then it just sort of stopped. And I said, oh, I'm standing there's a little building, and I'm reading it text.
Mm-hmm.
Said, well, what do I want to do? What do I do? And he says, well, you can type in with this keyboard 1 or 2 word sentences or commands, and it'll do something. He'd already played with it, so he kind of knew what it was. He said, you could type in an N for go north, or go north, or east or west, or go building, or whatever. So I started doing that, and then suddenly I'm in the building, and then I can get inventory objects, and then I can move around, and then I could go deeper and deeper, and eventually you can find your way into the cave, and then you could go through the cave, and then you realize you can meet other creatures, some good, some not so good. You could die, you can discover things, you can solve puzzles, and I just got completely engrossed in this thing, addicted to it. I had never known I would be that way. I'd never experienced such a thing. And I was playing it night and day. I was even at night when he was supposed to be working at Children's Hospital on the computer. I'm just going, I got an idea, to get past this.
Yeah, it's hard to a lesser extent than you, but I mean, I'm about to turn 39 pretty soon here. But I feel like I remember like the first time I played a game that felt like magical like that, like, I think it was Final Fantasy 2, and just being amazed by it.
Yeah.
Or no, it would have been in Final Fantasy 1. Sorry, I'm to think about it. Just being amazed by like the possibilities that were there. I feel like that's almost something that we take for granted now, because we grow up with like this wealth of so many like in your face, bold, very graphically like impressive games. But like that first time of playing a game where it feels like it's just text, but you feel like you can do almost anything.
Yeah.
Sounds like that was really meaningful to you.
Well, I'd always been very much a reader. Even you could even say a bookworm, and so I loved to read stories and fantasy and fiction, but not just fiction. I've always liked to read, even as a child, true life stories of people with adversity, like Robinson Crusoe. I don't even know that people read that anymore. But how he survived on this island, and or pioneers, going across, in covered wagons, and the adversity and how they survived. And those kind of things also intrigued me. And it's just adventure stories, Alice in Wonderland and Wizard of Oz, and just I always liked those kind of things. Murder mystery, Nancy Drew, and then she'd get out there and solve all these things. So those were books, and you couldn't play them; you just read them and imagine. And I had and still have a very big imagination. So when I played this, now the writing wasn't all that great. The text and everything, it wasn't like really dramatic.
You weren't wowed by the literary brilliance of Colossal Cave.
No, but what I was wowed by was the fact that I was entering into a story of sorts, but I could go where I wanted to a certain extent. I mean, it's not like anywhere. You got
to influence the story, and you had input into the system.
Yeah, and that's what intrigued me, I think. And I had to use my brain. I had to figure out puzzles. You come to obstacles. How do I get around this obstacle? Or how can I use this object I picked up? I picked up some objects. Can I use that? How could I solve this? And I was very intrigued by that too. That's the part that really drew me in, and that's really how this all started. And then after that, I finished the game. I got all the points, and I wanted to play more of these types of games. There was a company back then called Adventure International, run by a man named Scott Adams. And
we've had it's been a while, but we've had Scott on this podcast before. He's another pioneer, I think, in the world of video games.
Yes, because
I think too few people know about Scott, so it's cool that y'all's paths crossed.
Oh yeah. And so I said, Ken, I want to play more games like this, and he kind of did some research. Oh, there's this Adventure International. It's Scott Adams, and he's got some games that are like this. And at that time, they were on cassette.
Oh wow!
And by this time, we had moved to a new home, and he was still working for informatics, but not Children's Hospital anymore. And we had bought an Apple II computer, our first personal computer. And he was using the Apple II computer. He had thought at this point, maybe I can start a little personal software, a new personal computer software company, that we could do something with this personal computer. Nobody, was like, well, what do you do with a personal computer? Because up to that point, all computers were in businesses or government or something like that. And then all of a sudden you can have a personal computer in your home.
It was a new idea. Like, well, what do you even do with that?
Exactly. What do you do with that? And so everybody was at that point, and this was in we're probably talking early, maybe like January of 1980, because we just bought this computer for Christmas of 79. Well, what can you do? But Ken was one of the perfect people to do this because he had all this programming experience, and then working in informatics, he knew how to develop languages and artificial intelligence. He had some ideas about that they were working on. So he was almost like the perfect person to think of these ideas. And I had just come off of playing Colossal Cave, and I was really interested in Scott Adams's games. And so our computer was hooked up to a cassette drive. And so we bought some of his games on cassette, and they were little. I'm trying to remember. I don't think I remember. I think maybe it was like Pirate Adventure, and
that sounds right.
I think there was a Dracula one, and there was one that was kind of like going through a forest, like a magical forest, and things like that. But so we got a few of them and put them in the cassette drive, and I was playing on his Apple II while he was at work during the day on these games, and I played probably 3 of them. And no offense to Scott Adams, because he really was really inspirational for me too, and his games and what he did. But it just, Colossal Cave, there was just something about it that it just couldn't match, you know. And I just kept thinking, well, these are great and everything, but Colossal Cave, there's something about that.
That was your jam.
And so after a while, I started thinking, and in the meantime, Ken is working on what he decided that he thought we needed to do, or what he needed to do with his computer, is create a new language, or create a computer language on the Apple II that didn't exist. I think at this point, Microsoft was probably coming out with DOS or BASIC. I'm not sure, you know, what order, you know, or anything like that. And I know BASIC. I'm pretty sure on BASIC. And so Ken thought, Fortran. We need, that's what he should do, is work on Fortran and put it on the Apple II. Kind of like Bill Gates did with BASIC. And so he was working on that. He was working on translating or putting Fortran onto an Apple II computer. In the meantime,
so you began to connect the dots that hey, I could make my own Colossal Cave.
Well, he was doing that, and he was doing that with a fellow programmer who also was working in informatics, and they were working diligently, and this was going to be big. Just, you know, and this was going to start our company, and he would be partners with his friend. And in the meantime, I was just thinking, and I wanted to, I was compelled to, I don't know why I did it, but I just started designing a game that ultimately came out to be called Mystery House. And I remember thinking, well, what would it be like? Because nobody had ever done this before. And the Colossal Cave guys and Scott Adams.
Right.
You know, what would this be like? You know, that's Woods and Crowther. I should say Crowther. You know, I should give them their due for Colossal Cave. But I had no idea. I just said, okay, what games did I play growing up? And I remember I always liked the game of Clue. Played that a lot.
Yeah.
I always liked that. And then Agatha Christie's Clue. What, you know, what can I do? How can I relate that to something? And I thought, Agatha Christie, you know, the game of Clue always reminded me a little bit of Agatha Christie's 10 Little Indians, or Murder on the Nile, or, you know, these things. And I started thinking about, or, you know, those kind of trying to put together a story from a book, murder mystery, Clue, this sort of went together. And I just started drawing on a big piece of paper. I kind of drew this house with the different rooms in it, kind of like Clue. I guess I started from that idea of the board, you know, the board game.
And like for our listeners who I think if you don't know Mystery House, like we're talking about pretty. I don't mean this. I hope you do not take offense to this at all. But they're pretty.
Say because I say it myself.
They're pretty simple. They're pretty simple line drawings, right?
Oh, God, yeah.
But that was like nobody had done this before, really.
There were
so
no
it was
on. Something people
graphics were not a thing that people talked about with regard to games.
There were no graphics on computer games, personal computer games at that point. They came out very quickly, right after we did Mystery House. We came out with Mystery House. Richard Garriott came out with I think it was called a Caliban
of Ultima.
No,
right,
Caliban.
Richard Garriott of Ultima. Yeah, I was just saying of Ultima fame.
Oh yeah.
But I guess his first game was what was it called? Sorry,
Calibeth. Don't ask me how it spelled.
Right.
I don't remember that.
I don't know either. Yeah.
But it also I think it came out maybe 6 months or so after Mystery House. I believe, I could be wrong, but I believe that's the second game that came out with actual graphics. And when I say graphics, I don't mean you know that you think of the old Sega games or Atari where you've got the the kind of the, I don't know what you would even call that, the little line at the bottom,
sprites and
bricks, brick out and or trying to hit invaders coming down or things. I don't
Space
know
Invaders.
how you would but those were video games. Sega machines and those kind of Atari machines that you could plug into your TV, and you did probably have a little joystick or something. But those were just lines moving, really. They were just lines basically moving. Lines or pixels put together in little blobs or squares or rectangles that were moving around the screen, or you had X's and O's and things like that that were moving around. That was basically the graphics that you had. But actual pictures, as simplistic as they were, or stick drawings or whatever, there weren't even those. Those did not exist.
And when you were doing this too, by the way, like when you were developing Mystery House, were you thinking kind of at the time, this is just something I want to do, this seems fun, this is in my alley, or were you actually thinking like, hey, was there a thought of like, I can make a career out of this? This could be. Did you have any idea like what you were getting into?
What I was getting into, or why I was doing it?
Yeah, sure.
It started out. I just said, it's like, why does somebody, maybe they never painted before, a painting. Maybe they doodled as kids, drawings, and then they, got a little bit, more, and then all of a sudden, I wonder if I could paint. And they put a canvas on an easel, and they get their paints together, and they just start painting. What compelled them to do it? And then I had an idea of something I wanted to paint, and I just do it, and wow, I can do this. This is fun. I want to do more of it. Or you sit down and you think, I can maybe write a book, and you're going to start writing, and you do it. Maybe it's not so great the first one you do, or the first painting you do, but you just are compelled to do it because you just got this idea in your head and you just want to do it. It's almost like a compulsion. And that's the way it was with me. I just was compelled. It was in my head, and I couldn't get it. I was so drawn to Colossal Cave and then to Scott Adams games, and I just wanted to do it, and I wasn't satisfied, basically. No offense to Scott Adams, and I give him a lot of credit. I really do. But I wasn't satisfied with that. And I remember thinking, maybe I can do better. And I had some ideas, and I thought maybe I could, and I wanted to see if I could. And I just started drawing and thinking and creating this on paper, just this house, line drawings of a house, and thinking about you. And this, in this case, would be first person, no little characters being you. You could not drive a little character around the screen. That didn't exist. But out of your own eyes, in a house, and then you're going through this house. What are you doing? Well, if it's like Clue, you're probably, there's going to be a murder or two or three or however many.
Sure.
Are you going to be killed? Well, maybe you can get killed in Colossal Cave. You could get killed with God Adams's adventure game. So of course you can get killed. What are you trying to do? And then I had to think of that. And basically it turned out that you could get killed, but you were going to solve a mystery. There were people with you in this house and exploring, not real people. It was computer people that you could see. They were really awful drawings because I did them. But it's not that I'm that bad of an artist. I mean, if you look at the pictures now, you break, oh my God, she's and I'm not an artist. I do think I'm a pretty good writer, but I'm not an artist. But also Ken had to figure out that. Bottom line is, I got my game all designed. It was all there. I could see it. And by this time I had a huge piece of paper with it. The whole game was on it and I could see it. And I could see where everything happened and puzzles and objects to get. And I could see it. I knew exactly what it was. And Ken knew I was doing it, but he just thought I was playing, I think. This was just fun thing.
No idea
I'm
where this would go.
Now I'm doing Fortran. That's going to be our future. And I was trying to get him interested in looking at it because I really, 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 by this time, going back to your question, what was I thinking at this point? I was thinking this is pretty good. I was thinking.
Yeah. That's cool. That's great.
And I thought, I cannot be the only person that thinks like this. It was such a strong compulsion for me, so strong. I had never experienced anything like it, that I just knew. It was one of those things you just knew. I don't know why I knew. I just knew it. And I was trying to convince him to look at it and say, I need you to program this. I can't do this. I'm not that good. I know Cobalt just a little bit, but I cannot do this. And he wouldn't. No. It's Fortran.
He didn't see it. Yeah.
His buddy, and they were talking, and they had all these big ideas what they were going to do, and he couldn't turn down his buddy. They were highly involved in this. What they were doing.
Yeah, and I asked that question because I think it's hard for us to put ourselves in that headspace of where you and Ken must have been, because we live in this world now where video games are this multi-billion-dollar industry, and it's super competitive. But the space that you're in at this time, I imagine most people kind of thought like your husband, like. The future of computing and programming is on the business side of things.
Exactly.
But like entertainment, games, that's sort of like, what is that?
Right. So I can see his point of view. I mean, I'm definitely not knocking Ken. And who knows if he had put Fortran on.
Well, we should knock him a little bit because he was wrong, right?
I tell him that, but he'll come back at me and say, well, if I had put Fortran on a computer, and it had hit like Basic did with Bill Gates and Microsoft, we could be billionaires by now. We don't know. I mean, we don't know. One thing that note though is, as far as I know, Fortran to this day has never been put on the any Apple computer of any sort.
So that's funny. He sees himself as he could have been this.
Bill Gates and his.
Yeah.
So he will come back now, and say something like that. And it could be true. We don't. Who knows? Who knows?
Yeah.
But
I'll see if I can get Bill Gates on this podcast next, and I'll see what he thinks of this. This idea.
So yes, but anyway, well, how I got Ken away from this whole thing with Fortran and with his buddy whose name was Bob Leff, a great guy. How I got him away from that was I had this game, and it was, like I said, it was on this huge piece of paper that I went and got at some stationery store or something, I don't know. And it was all drawn out. It was all there. And I said, Ken, come over here. You got to look. No. I think he was saying no because I think he was afraid I was going to get him drawn into it. And he didn't want to go there because he knew because I had said, I really need to program this. And he didn't want to be drawn in. He didn't want to be sidetracked. And he just wanted to focus on the Fortran. So what I did, and he just wouldn't listen. So one Friday, he was still working at informatics with his buddy Bob Leff, and Bob Leff was coming over to our house on weekends and Friday nights, and they were working and planning and all this. On Friday night, I said to Ken, I've got a surprise for you. I got a babysitter for our 2 little kids, and we're going to go out. I made reservations at our favorite restaurant in Simi Valley. It was called the Plank House. It was a steakhouse. And we like to go there every now and then and, order steak and Caesar salad.
Sure.
And have some margaritas and dessert after and, all this. And it was, it was like on a hill, and it overlooked Simi Valley, which was kind of interesting at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, yeah, I got these reservations and a babysitter. We'll go out and we'll just, and I remember I said, why? I said, I don't know. It just seemed fun, why not?
Yeah.
It's like, oh, okay. So we did. We left the kids with the babysitter. We went out to Plank House and had a great time. We ordered all our favorites and had a couple of margaritas, and whatever, and maybe more than usual.
I see where you're going. I think
I'm going. It's having a lot of fun, just everything.
Yeah.
And then right around the time for dessert, I planned this all out. I mean, this is sneaky wives sometimes.
Yeah.
We all
I love
our
it.
secrets a little bit. I will admit. And I said, can I take some of your time to talk about my game? And immediately he looked at me, and his expression changed from happy we're here, we're having margaritas, to serious. And he kind of pointed his eyes at me like, uh-oh. And he literally, I have told this story so many times. He literally, he lifted his wrist with his watch, and looked at his watch, and then he looked at me with his hand still raised with his watch.
Yeah.
And he said, I'll give you 5 minutes. That's it.
Oh.
Now,
wow.
I could have gotten very angry at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And if he did it today, in today's world, I would get angry if he did it to me now. I'd go, who do you think you are?
Yeah. Excuse me. Yeah.
I knew better. Not because I was a little wifey wife, but I knew that what I was going to ask him was going to be a big deal.
Yeah.
So I knew that I had better be careful.
Yeah.
Because this could be our future, the way I was looking at it.
Yeah.
And so I didn't do I'm going to be mad at you. How dare you talk to me like that? I didn't do that. I was just so glad he was going to give me my 5 minutes, and I had my whole patter ready to go. And so I went into it, and talked very quickly. And I just had my whole spiel ready, and I went right into it, and I was very passionate, and I knew what I had, and I went through it and all my ideas, but I condensed it. And I know that 5 minutes came and went.
Yeah.
And I was still talking.
So you had him. You had him interested.
Talking.
Yeah.
And so I kept going, and so I probably kept going for maybe 10 minutes, maybe 15, but I know it wasn't any more than that. And all of a sudden he said, are you thinking this is going to be a text game? And I said, well, I maybe, but boy, I mean, it'd be great to have some kind of graphics. And he said something along the lines, yeah, let me think about that. After that, we just got into the nuts and bolts of the rest of the meal through dessert and everything on how this could be done. Yeah. And the next day, Ken went to, there was like 4 computer stores in all of Los Angeles County at this point. All of Los Angeles County.
Right.
And
not a small area.
Yeah, we went to one of them and he got something called a graphics tablet, which is really nothing more but an acrylic piece, kind of a square big tablet, flat acrylic piece that had kind of an arm, kind of a, I don't know what you call those, articulated arm on it.
Yeah.
And then with a thing that looked like the end of a record player, where it had kind of like a little, like, I don't know, you wouldn't call it a needle. It's not a needle, but it was really a magnetic eye, but it kind of had that sort of feeling.
Okay.
And you could take this articulated arm over this piece, this flat piece of acrylic, and underneath it, what you could do is you could tape a piece of paper, on this acrylic tablet with a drawing on it, and then with this articulated arm with this little ending, like with this little magnetic eye, you could take this little magnetic eye over your drawing, over the lines of your drawing, and if somebody had some software that was, and if you could plug this into your Apple computer through via wires, of course, and if there was some software to go with it, you could take something from this graphics tablet through this magnetic eye and through the little wires in your computer and translate the lines over to your computer.
Yeah.
But there was no software. You could buy the you could buy the apparatus, but there was no software.
Yeah.
So
right.
You had to write the software, and that came down to Ken.
Yeah.
So he was already thinking. So I think in his mind at that point, he was going to try to do both, Fortran and my game.
Yeah.
But the more he started working on my game, I think the less interested he became in Fortran.
Yeah.
And it just evolved, and then finally had to tell Bob Leff, I'm sorry, we're not going to do that.
Yeah. So eventually you got him to see the light, huh? And he was not. It sounds like he wasn't just willing to help. After a while, it became his passion too. It sounds.
Yeah,
like.
It did, and because I think he could see that there was a future with this, and plus we were having fun doing it together. And it was a project that he and I were working on together. And then when Mystery House shipped, it was immediately very, very popular. You have to recognize that back in those days, that game was only going to sell to people who had Apple II computers. Plus, we made the ultimate decision. We were not going to put this game on cassette. It was only going to be on floppy disks, and by this point we had bought a floppy disk drive. We got rid of our cassette. Well, we kept one around just in case, but we were now computing with our Apple II computer with disk drive and floppy disk, and we made the decision to have our game be only on a floppy disk, which was a big. It really helped Apple II computers sell, especially with floppy disk, and that sort of spurred on moving away from cassette player, cassette disk drives to hard disk floppy disk drives, and that sort of spurred. So we helped also, I think, spur the sales of personal computers.
Yeah, that's
decisions
cool.
Like that.
Yeah. So this led to, of course, to Sierra Online, and and eventually to I think there was in between King's Quest in this. There was the Wizard and the Princess.
Well,
is that right?
After Mystery House, between Mystery House, which was developed in Simi Valley, California, and that's where we started our company. And at that point, it was called Online Systems because of Ken's contract work that he had been doing for a little while. It seems like he'd been doing it for years, but the truth of the matter is he'd been doing it like a year. But we just moved around and did so much, in that. Well, no, he was doing it more than that. No, I guess he was doing it for about 2 or 3 years. So, but he had to have a what do you call it? An LLC, small business development. It's kind of like you're a small business. You're not a corporation. You're smaller than that legally for tax purposes and things like that. But so he had I think it's called an LLC. I should know that, but as under the name Online Systems to do his contract work, meaning I'm not an employee of another company. I'm a contractor, and a lot of contractors have that for their legal business identity, I guess, tax-wise, whatever. And so we initially called, when we did our game, Mystery House, we just put it under that same LLC. And Online Systems. Then we moved to Oakhurst, California, almost, probably within a couple of months of releasing Mystery House. We moved there. My parents lived there. It's up in the woods between Fresno and Yosemite, a little small town. And at that point, Ken just said, we need another game. We were settling in, and we thought at that point that we were just going to be partners in game development, just he and I, and it'd be fun.
Yeah.
And that's how we would make he had quit informatics and he was full-time running.
But at this point, you're doing, I mean, this isn't like the video game industry is today, but you're making by this point good money off of Mystery House, and
money. Way more money. Way more money. He was earning good money as a programmer, and his contract work. We were living pretty well for people who were only about 22. No, we were older than that. I guess by this time Chris was born. No, we were about 24.
But pretty
25.
young.
24, 25 by this time. Yeah, we were living pretty large with his programming work in the Los Angeles area. For 24-year-olds, we were living pretty well. But Mystery House just hit us like a ton of bricks. Like, oh my God, this is pretty awesome.
Yeah, who knew?
And
well, you knew. But.
Yeah, well, but Ken had been commuting with all his various jobs in the Los Angeles area for the 5 years or so that we've been married. Up to that point, 6 years, I think. He had some long commutes on the freeways of Los Angeles, and the smog and the hecticness and hectic life of living down there. And my parents had moved to Oakhurst, and we'd visit them from time to time, and it just seemed so idyllic, and the trees and the woods, and it just seemed like such a nice life. And we had our 2 little kids, and we just thought, well, wouldn't this be great? We just move up to the woods and get a nice cabin and be near my parents, and it'd be a nice place to raise the kids. And so we just moved there. And Ken said, well, we need another game, so start. And I did Wizard of the Princess, and he and I started it together, started programming it. But this time he wrote a whole programming language to develop these games, and we added color to our graphics. We used color of the Apple II computer, and whereas Mystery House had been black and white, this one was color, and he figured out a way to get more color than, I think it was either 6 or 8 base colors that you could use on the Apple II. I can't remember if it's 6 or 8, but he wanted to be able to put in more than just those base colors, and he figured out a way to dither colors together, put pixels of these base colors together to try to create more colors. which is what he did.
I think that's one of the cool things about your story is that you're not just like creating these iconic, groundbreaking games, but you're also creating tools to make those games. Like the tools to do these things didn't exist, so y'all just figured it out, which I think is really, really cool.
Right. Well, and the nice thing about it, by figuring out these tools, by programming these tools, we obviously own these tools. And then we could utilize these tools to build more games. And the other nice thing is that, you know, as the business grew, and at this point we changed to Sierra Online. We put that Sierra word in front of online. We'd been Online Systems, and now we became Sierra Online because we were in the Sierra Nevadas up there in the mountains and the woods. And became an actual corporation. So we became an actual real business. Yeah. And he had to run the business, and he became more and more involved in running the business and less involved with programming, which he dearly missed. But I was able to stay designing more games. And of course, as that happened, we hired programmers. We hired artists. We hired, at first it was basically artists and programmers, and me, and then we began to decide we needed more designers. We couldn't just depend on me. I'm one person, and it just became obvious that the business was going to grow, and so we brought in other people that can design the games, like me, and then other kinds of games too. Football
and King's Quest. King's Quest was the first adventure game to have animation, isn't that right? Like, or one of them at least.
That
was pretty new idea.
I'm trying to think. I think so. Yeah, you're right. I think that the last game that I was trying to think the other day. I worked on 5 games, maybe 6, with somebody else. But I think I worked on 5 games before King's Quest.
King's Quest,
Mystery House, Wizard and the Princess. Then I did something called Time Zone, which was a quick and dirty. It was a real quick one. Not Time Zone, I'm sorry. Mission Asteroid.
Okay.
Time Zone was not a quick and dirty. No, it was Mystery House, Wizard and the Princess, Mission Asteroid, like Mission Impossible. It's Mission Asteroid. And then Time Zone, which was a huge game, very complex. And then I think the Dark Crystal. Pretty sure that was from Jim Henson.
Like based on the Jim Henson,
The Dark Crystal. Though I think those were the 5 that I worked on before
King's Quest. Yeah.
In King's Quest, so yes, we didn't have any animation in any of those games.
So did you bring in animators, or did you?
We had to bring in.
Was that something you had to figure out of how to incorporate animation into a game? I guess those were new tools you had to build as well.
King's Quest was the first game where we had to really upgrade all of our tools. I think, in fact, that might have been, we had our first toolbox or adventure game engine was AGI.
Okay.
That might have been AGI, might have been Adventure Game Interpreter, something like that. AGI. I think we had to completely upgrade. They completely rewrote our computer game engine, our adventure game engine for King's Quest, and it was CGI. Is that what it was? God, Ken's not here. Computer game interpreter. Maybe it was CGI. Okay. CGI, computer game interpreter. Because it incorporated all of the new upgrades and the new way of looking at and designing an adventure game came with King's Quest. And that's because it really started with IBM's PC Junior. And what happened was, if you want to, I don't know if you want to get into that or not.
Give us we're running out of time here, but you can give us the really
quick. Well, IBM wanted us to
version.
do an adventure game based on Wizard and the Princess for their new PC Junior, and so we had about a year to develop it. And the PC Junior was able to incorporate animation, 3D. I mean, not 3D, third dimension, third person with a character on screen that you could control, and other characters that could move around, and the animation, more colors, more sound effects, it was more cave RAM, so just more memory. Yeah. So we were able to do more, and that came. So we developed a new adventure game interpreter, and that was, I think it was CGI, and that began a whole new.
That's cool. Yeah, opened up all kinds of new windows. Yeah,
a whole new future for adventure games.
Yeah, this is such a cool story because I just think of like how you have empowered so many people. I think, because I think back to, even you were kind of worried earlier that you might sound like you were disparaging Scott Adams's work because there were things about his games that you didn't like or wanted to improve upon. But I think that's such a beautiful thing. Like, I think in a way that actually is, you could look at that as a compliment to him, because his work inspired you. Yeah. And I mean, how many people played King's Quest and Mystery House and later Phantasmagoria and opened up their minds to what was possible with games. I mean, so much of the work you did pioneered a lot of just wonderful games that wouldn't have been possible had you not had this kind of determination to not only make a game but get your husband to make it with you, which I think was a key part of the battle.
Oh, definitely. Had that evening at the Plank House restaurant not worked, well, he would have gone on and doing his Fortran, and who knows? We'll never know.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right.
What's up, nerd? You digging this podcast? Well, the audio enjoyment doesn't end there. Visit ltnonair.com and make LTN Radio your new go-to for the best Christian rock, rap, pop, and indie, as well as our exclusive LTN shows and podcasts, some of which air on the station before they're available anywhere else. Visit ltnonair.com to listen now and find the link to our app. Now back to the show.
Do you have a game that you look back on and that's the one you're sort of most fond or most proud of? What have you done that you really look back on and think, we really got that one right? I'm really proud of that.
Well, I mean,
you feel that way about all of them?
Well, not all of them. I mean, there are games that I worked on that I'm not proud of anything I worked on. I mean, I don't want to categorize it like that. But there are games that for instance, I worked with Disney, on two different games. One was The Black Cauldron, which was based on the Disney movie that actually I don't think did that well. But I worked with them on that. But I also did another game called Mickey's, like Mickey Mouse, Mickey's Space Adventure, which, it was just a quick and dirty kind of game. Not dirty, but I mean, it was just a quickie game to work on with them for them, and it was okay. It was nothing to write home about, but but the one game, there's several games that I really have more in my heart. One is obviously the first King's Quest, because that's the one that really Mystery House really started it all too, I should say. Mystery House, and then that started it all, and then the next kind of big jump and leap forward would be King's Quest, the first King's Quest. Then but then the other, actually, well, then the other one that's not necessarily a big leap forward, but that it's also in my heart, is the Laura Bow series. I wanted to start this series for well, maybe for girls, for women, the Laura Bow murder mystery series, series, and I did the Colonel's Bequest, and I think that was probably between I'm trying to think. That must have been after, or now I'm trying to piece when I actually did that, if it was before King's Quest or after. That I think it must have been after, but
I love to hear that story though, because there's still a lot of talk about this today about how video games are, and it's not true, but how video games are a predominantly young male hobby. And that's not true today. That's less true today than ever before, right?
That's for sure. Yeah.
But even, back then you were setting out to design some games specifically with women in mind, which is really, really cool.
Well, yeah, to some extent, because obviously, I am a woman, and so I would want girls or women or older women or whoever, whoever, whatever age you are, to enjoy my games, not just boys, men, whatever. And so I was obviously interested in that, but I never came at it from the idea that I want to really just concentrate on women or girls only. I never came from it from that standpoint. I really wanted everybody to enjoy my games. I wanted to everybody, but I knew for it to be everybody, I did have to bring in the female component, so to speak, and then you really do have everybody. And that was really what was more in my mind. But the Laura Bow, I really loved working on that game a lot. I thought it was a lot of fun. It was sort of going back to Mystery House and the whole idea of an Agatha Christie murder mystery story, and I really love that, and I wanted to develop it further. I never got the chance. We did do a second Laura Bow game called The Dagger of Amun-Ra, but I didn't design it. It was a good game, but I didn't design it. I was very disappointed in that. I really wanted to, but by this time I was sort of being told what games to work on. It was starting to. I was getting from on high. Some of my especially you have to do another King's Quest. So I was trying to do a King's Quest, and then
the game community was beginning to find its voice and demand more of their favorite IP.
Right. So what was happening is I do believe the Laura Bow, the Colonel's Bequest, was right after King's Quest 1. Because I think I did King's Quest and then Laura Bow, the Colonel's Bequest. And then I probably did King's Quest 2 and then something else. And then King's Quest 3 and something else. King's Quest 4 and something else. I was trying to get some of my ideas in between.
Yeah.
But the other game, the last game that I really, and this might be the biggest one that my heart was really into, that I loved working on, was Phantasmagoria. I loved working on that. That one was the most difficult, the most complex, the most out there, weird, why would you do that? And really trying to push the envelope on technology of all my games and all of Sierra Online's games up to that point. And it was really difficult to do, and it took a lot of time and money, and I wasn't ever really sure it was going to even work. We were really taking a risk on that one, but I loved it. It was fun.
Right. Yeah. And that's another one I think that was pretty groundbreaking in terms of is it fair to say it was aimed at an adult audience?
Oh, of course.
And that's was kind of, if I remember right, it was kind of a new idea back then. We're kind of aiming a lot of games at certainly the King's Quest games felt a lot more playful and, so.
Well, the reason I did it, the reason, I mean, just like with the murder mystery of Mystery House and then the Laura Bow murder mystery series, you know, I've always liked murder mysteries. I like it. I like a lot. You know, I'm actually I'm well rounded.
Sure.
You know, I like history. I love history, archaeology, murder mysteries, fantasy, space. You know, and space travel. The idea of that.
Yeah.
I don't want to say so much that I'm into horror, but I set it up for myself as a challenge, and it came about that somebody said about on, I think it was King's Quest 5, or was it 4? I'm not so sure now. You know, it all gets lost in the mist of my memory. Where we did an opening scene. It could have been King's Quest 4. I think it was King's Quest 4, where I added a female character that you control. It was Rosella, our first, you know, female character. Well, no, it was Laura Bow. Yeah, that's true. Wasn't that?
Okay.
Anyway, but our opening scene we made very melodramatic. We usually would later on we'd have an opening scene. It was animated with music and credits, you know, and all of that. And we did this opening scene. It was very sad because King Graham collapsed and he was very sick, and that's where Rosella, his daughter, had to go and find this magic fruit that she could bring back and save his life. But the scene was very dramatic, and actually when we first showed it to some journalists and players and fans at one of the it might have been at CES, some people actually teared up and watching it because they were so into the you know, the King's Quest series, and so somebody wrote, "Can a computer make you cry?" Yeah. And the answer came back in this article, yes it can, you know, and it was about this opening scene, you know, and King Graham collapses and there was some tears. And so we were just, you know, me and some of the other team members, we were just bouncing around ideas one day and said, I wonder if a computer, because some people were trying to think up and develop horror or scary at that time. And could a computer really scare you like a horror movie can? Yeah. You could go see a horror movie and sit there and go, oh my God, you know, and you want to hide your eyes. You don't want to see it. Uh-huh. And you can get scared. Oh, and that just got into my mind, and I was I kept wondering about it. As you could probably tell at this point, I like a challenge. You know, I love a challenge. You give me a challenge, and it'll get in there, and I'll just think about it and think about it and think about it, and so it became for me a challenge. And I know it didn't fit my persona, and it really doesn't fit my persona. I have to tell you, it really doesn't. I'm more a King's Quest girl. I really am. Yeah. I'm actually very meek and mild, and I'm a really good girl, you know, and I don't do anything. I'm not that, I don't think I'm that strange. But I became intrigued by the idea of if I could write a game that could scare someone, like a horror movie. And that was the genesis of the idea, and the reason why it turned into using actors, which then became a whole nother thing. You know, we had to build a movie studio, and we had to do all kinds of stuff. Oh wow! You know, and we had the scenery, or the world that Phantasmagoria was set in was a 3D world. It was rendered 3D. The entire world in 3D. You could, you know, look. We could do it, but it doesn't come off that way in the game because the computers then did not have the power to do it. The RAM, Didn't have the power to do it, so we couldn't have the moving through a 3D world. But the world for Phantasmagoria was developed all in 3D. And the reason we did that is because we're going to be using actors and some scenes and just playing the game and having the characters being actors. We had to change camera angles a lot. And the only way we could do that was by having a 3D world. So we could grab shots from it. The reason I decided I wanted actors was I decided that we were never, ever, ever going to scare somebody with a computer with computer characters. You're never going to have that empathy. You in order to be scared, and this is what I came up with, in order to be truly scared, or you're thinking, oh my God, something's going to happen to her, for instance. Don't open that door. She's heading towards the door, and and if you write the script well enough, you believe there's something really, really bad behind that door. And in movies, they invariably go and open the door, right? Right. And you shouldn't. I don't think a computer character going up to that door and maybe opening it is going to scare you. But an actress, and the story was written, and with actors and an actress, you might. And that's why I decided to have actors.
Gotcha.
I didn't do it because I wanted to do some, be way out there on the edge. Well, I did, but not really for that reason. Yeah. That's why
that's cool. Yeah. Well, we've crossed the hour mark, which I promised you, so I want to respect your time. But I do have one last question that I think would be remiss not to ask. I think, like I mentioned this before, there's this perception about video gaming as being and like we said, it's less true now than ever before, being a predominantly young male hobby. And I think that's also reflected in the industry and people who are making games today. Like, it's still, game designers there are more women making games now than ever before, which is awesome. But I think there's still a long way to go for the industry. I'd be curious to hear about your experience. I feel like you've inspired a lot of women to get out there and make games. And I don't know. Do you what's that been like? I mean, just hearing from I'm sure countless women who say thank you for stepping out there and making these games and like figuring it out and paving the way. And what's that been like for you?
Well, I'm proud of it, of course. I guess you could say I was probably the pioneering woman in the industry, especially for computer games. And I do want to add, I did have some experience with computers before I ever did it. I did delve into the world of computers with operations. I had 2 jobs.
I mean, you were figuring it out from day one. It sounds like, which is
for Lowry's Food. So so which also helped me in figuring out how to design these games. I think had I not had that experience, I don't know that I would have had the. I mean, I might have, but it obviously helped me. So I was sort of into that beforehand anyway. But I'm very proud of it, of course. And I hear, and I still hear a lot from women who were as young girls played my games, and so many, and they tell me how they were inspired and how that they made that decision young to go into the same career as I did, and I'm very honored. Very much so.
That's great. That's great. And I want to be like really clear too. You've inspired, your inspiration for game designers goes well beyond that. Like, I think you've inspired countless human beings to take risks and make unique and interesting games. And It's what the cool. I've talked to some really neat people on this podcast. I mean, I think back to the time when I got to talk to Ken Levine, who made BioShock and BioShock Infinite, or Rand Miller, who worked on the Myst games, and with his brother. But I think this I think is probably the most. Yeah, just. I don't think I've ever talked to someone quite of your influence in this medium that I love. So, just personally want to say I'm really honored to get to chat with you. It's been really cool.
Thank you. I'm honored to meet you, and I'm honored that you're happy to talk to me and learn about these things. I would like to. I know our time is short. I'd like to.
Sure. No, take as long as you have time. I'm good. I just want to respect your time.
Time. Yeah. So, and my coffee is holding out pretty good too. So I'm still okay.
Great.
No, two things I would like to bring up. I would like to bring up my book. I did write a book.
Oh, great. Yeah, please do.
And it's called Farewell to Terra. It's not anything that anybody would think would have anything to do with me, being fantasy or fiction. People would probably imagine that I would write something along the lines of Harry Potter, or something like that. And I probably could. I probably would do an okay job with it. But I got in it after we sold Sierra Online a long time ago, got over 20 years ago. I found that I needed something to do. I didn't know what to do. My whole life, I mean, for 20 years, I've been doing these games, and this is what I was doing. And my last game was King's Quest VIII, Mask of Eternity. And then, boom, out of a job. I knew it. We knew it. We sold the game, and we knew it. It wasn't a surprise, but it's just what was going to happen. And I needed something to do. I got into genealogy, and I found that because I wanted to go over my mom's Irish ancestry. I found that I was really good at it because it kind of reminded me, doing genealogy, sort of like playing an adventure game. It's a lot of searching and exploring and putting together puzzles and finding things and putting it together. And I wrote a book. I traced them back to the famine in Ireland, and I wrote a book, a fiction, a novel, a saga based on the family, but their characters, what they went through in the famine and coming to America as an immigration story. But I made them characters with dialogue and a story, and it's fictionalized, but it's real, and it's out there if anybody's interested. Farewell to Terra. It's on Amazon.
Cool.
The other thing I wanted to bring up, Ken and I are working on a game. It's Ken and I. We should change it to Ken and Roberta's game, but that's okay. We'll keep it. We'll keep it Ken's game.
They need to change this URL. This is
no. Well, that's okay.
Come on.
We'll keep it Ken's game. And actually, it kind of started out that way because Ken and I have done a lot since we put Sierra Online to a new company, new place. Besides me getting into genealogy, we also got into cruising around the world on a boat. And so we became, big world cruisers, just doing it ourselves. Just no crew or anything, just me and him, and cruised around the world for over 10 years. And people can see that on kensblog.com. That's his whole, our whole boating experience. And then Ken, and we did that, and then Ken needed another project. And so I suggested, why don't you write a book? Because I was just finishing up my book, Farewell to Terra, and he was looking for something to do. And I said, why don't you write a book? Write it about your memoirs or something about Sierra and how we did it. And so he wrote that book, and it's
that's great.
It's not all fairy tales have happy endings. Kind of a long title. Not all fairy tales have happy endings. And he wrote that book, which did very well. That's also on Amazon. And then he needed another project. He was
of course.
projects. And,
I'm sensing a theme here.
Yeah, and so, well, I do too. I mean, I've had my projects, and I said, well, why don't you why don't you see if you can write a game? And he was looking at Unity, the game tools, the game engines that Unity has for 3D and, basically 3D and 3D animated camera. It's a whole basically language and game tools that many people use today to design games. Why don't you take a look at that? So he did. Started, and he and I came up with an idea. And so he and I, and we've got some other people involved, are writing a game. We're designing a game.
Oh, great. That's cool. Well, can't wait to hear more about it and see what y'all come up with.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that'll be great. Well, it's so cool to hear that, all these years later, you're still making games. Yeah.
Him and I.
Yeah. Your passion for game design has not left you.
I thought he was going to do it at first. I was curious to see what he would do if he was going to start a game, and I wasn't drawn into it quite at first, but I've been drawn into it.
Yeah.
This is a case where I drew him. Yeah, I drew him.
Yeah, the roles are reversed. Yeah, he's trying to convince you into. Yeah,
that's right.
That's great. Mm-hmm. I love it. Well, so cool to chat with you, Roberta, and really, really enjoyed hearing your story. And man, I feel like we could do 2 or 3 or 4 more of these podcasts, and we would never run out of stories that I would love hearing about your work in the industry. So